Hello there, this is William with Alliance. Today we're going to do a video in-service on this JMP-60H. So this unit here is mounted on a Freightliner chassis. Your chassis and options may be different than the unit we're showing today, but we're going to go over the features of this unit. If you have any questions, just call our service department and we'll go over those with you. So starting right here at the hood, we're going to go underneath the hood. I'm going to go over some key features on this truck that you would be interested in seeing. So there's some things that we modify or add to the engine bay, which is going to be helpful to know if we do any maintenance or troubleshooting down the road. So on all chassis, we need to connect the pump to the truck. So we're going to use an interface connection. We call it a Deutsch connector. It's mounted right here. It's a silver connection. That's where we interface all the connections from the pump to the truck. So PTO power, engine RPM, engine stop, those kind of things get interfaced through that connector. There's also a 4-pin Deutsch plug right here, and that's to interface your proximity switch, which is mounted on the front of the PTO, and we'll go through that a little bit later, but this is for troubleshooting and service. And then on the top of the engine, this unit has a optional water tank heater. So there's a valve on the top of the engine here that turns on the coolant, which then flows to the back to the water tank. So there's a valve here on the top of the engine. We'll also show there's a valve lower down on the side of the engine on the passenger side. All right, now that we're done under the hood, we're gonna go into the cab. We're just gonna review all the standard items which come with this unit. In the cab here, we've added some features to the unit to make the concrete pump work. So starting off, the PTO switch. So we have a light which indicates when your PTO is on. We also have a second light here, which we'll review in a little bit. This is the PTO when you're in the correct gear light. So we want to review that. There's also some safety stickers we've added, some warnings. This truck has a air suspension, so you can dump that there. That's factory for this unit. There's a working lamp light for working around the unit that you can turn on in the cab, so you can see the job site when you're entering in the morning or late at night and exiting. And then down here you'll see the remote. This remote is an RCOM. We also have other options other than RCOM, but there's a remote mounted to the battery charger in this location. So also in the cab there will be your manuals for your truck and the pump. This unit here, we'll usually put them underneath the bench seat. There's also some spare components for the truck, like nut buddies, spare rags, flare kit, fire extinguisher. Those kind of things are standard in these trucks. So we're going to go over engaging this JMP-60 into PTO. So with your parking brake set, make sure you have if you have a pull type parking brake or a hand parking brake, you have it in park. And then the transmission in neutral. So with the transmission in neutral, I put my foot on the brake. There's turn on the PTO switch, and then I'm gonna select drive. So you're gonna select drive, you're gonna keep your foot on the pedal till you see this green 3-3 light turn on. Then you'll let your foot off the brake, and you'll hear the drive line spin, you hear the engine RPM come up, and then we can grab our remote, turn our remote on, and go and do some operations on the pump. If you ever have any questions on what these features are, there's a procedure on how to put it in PTO right here. There's a couple other stickers that we just want to reference here. Before disengaging or engaging the PTO, make sure the transmission is in neutral. So if we want to go back out of PTO, foot on the brake, neutral, wait a couple seconds. I'd like to do the kind of 1, 2, 3. Your light goes out, and then we can turn off the PTO. You can hear that audible air change, and then we're out of PTO. Then you can go to driving down the road. So when you go into PTO, we want a PTO switch on, wait a couple seconds, then select drive. Then I can see this 3-3 light turned on, let off the brake, and now we're again good to go. So up above we have your PTO and drive solenoid. So this solenoid tells the PTO box to which direction to go, drive or PTO. So there's a little LED light you'll see on here when you're driving or when you're in pump gear. All right, so underneath this cover, we went over it earlier, there is your PTO and drive solenoid. So if for some reason you have a electrical issue and you do not have power going to this, you can engage PTO, which is this side, or drive, which is this side, with this little slotted screw here. So with my flashlight, you can see there's an O and an I. O is off, so normally they need to be an O, but if you need to operate, you can hear that changed over. That's for drive. And then for pump, if you need to go into PTO or pump mode, we can get our screwdriver in here, and you can hear the PTO changeover. And then to disengage, you turn it back to O. That's how to override the PTO and drive solenoid. So like I say, I turns it on for PTO or drive, O turns it back to operating with electrical power. So on the back of the PTO here, this is your oil sight glass. We want that oil level to be in the glass near to the middle. And then if you're changing your oil, there's a drain plug here to drain. I also recommend, if you're doing a service on here, to take this plug out and wash it out with some solvent or some brake cleaner so that you can easily visually see what's going on in there. On the front side of your PTO, we can see this is your air cylinder to engage and disengage the PTO. So when the piston in here is towards the front of the truck, that's pump, and the piston goes towards the back, that's drive. This sensor senses the piston and the fork coming to the front, and it should light up amber. So when this lights up amber, this tells the transmission on the truck to go in the correct gear. So this truck goes into third gear, so you'll get that 3-3 light. As well as there's a connector up here. This one is for the sensor. If the sensor ever needs to be changed or any troubleshooting needs to happen, we can go in the connector here and do some troubleshooting. Right below here, we have your working light. So this is the working light we talked about, the switch in the cab. So this turns on this light here and the light in the back and on both sides. So if we enter the electrical panel, or the side cabinet here, where the electrical panel is located, we have a couple of things that come with your unit. Some touch-up paint. You get however many colors you have, you get touch-up paint for that. In here we have some remote items. So this is like a protective cover, owner's manuals in here. And then the main electrical panel with your hour meter, temperature gauge, all your fuses, everything that's in there is labeled here as a quick reference guide. And you have your remote receiver. As you can see on the right side of this cabinet, we have the remote receiver inside this panel. So the remote receivers will be mounted in this area. This one's mounted inside of a box just because we've added this relay here and some diodes. So there is a blinking light, or an indicator light on this side that will tell you if there's what's going on with your remote receiver. If you have any troubleshooting, you can go off of this. And then if you enter this panel, inside this panel you will get some spare components. You'll get a test light, you'll get pumping relay, optional relays for the different options on the pump, which are here, a spare electrical solenoid or coil, main power relay. You'll get an assortment of fuses, which are here, assortment of different fuses. You'll get all that. Here's some more small relays, and then you'll also get the electrical schematic for that in this electrical panel. It's all very well labeled. If you have any questions, you can reference this, or you can quick reference this if you have any issues on the job site, or if you cannot get through and get it figured out, you can always give our service department a call and we'll help you out through electrical. One really nice feature about our pumps is they're all very user-friendly. Our electrical panels are relay and fuse based, so there's no computer boards, no major troubleshooting that needs to happen. We can do everything with a test light or a multimeter and basic electrical knowledge, and we can help you through that on the phone. And now that we're done in here, we can close the panel up and we're going to head over to the toolbox and we're going to review what comes in the toolbox. So down here we have our truck mounted fuel tank. This unit I think is 80 gallons. So you got 80 gallons of fuel there. And then we have our toolbox. So this is where the rest of the components that come with the unit are. So we're just going to go through here and I'll briefly mention what everything is for. So wrapped up, you'll have, this is a hardwire remote. So this takes the place of the wireless remote. So this unit, you need a cable to operate it. So that comes with your cable. This is a 75-foot cable. So you have option if for some reason you have an interference issue with your wireless remote, you can run this and continue pumping. You get a toolbox full of tools. There's spanner wrenches, screwdriver, hammer, grease gun, pressure gauge, this ratcheting wrench that comes with, Allen keys. You've got this is a component that a lot of customers don't know about, but it's called a sensing valve. So every pump comes with a sensing valve, and what I would recommend is taking this out, putting it on your shelf in your office, because this is a hydraulic component. It is wrapped, but it's just in a bag. It's not sealed, but it's good to keep this, but put it on your shelf in your parts room. It has tiny little screwdrivers, which are helpful. A couple spare grease fittings, scraper. So that covers what's in there. Then there's some spare hydraulic hoses. I'm not going to take those out, but those are the major hydraulic hoses, the pressure hoses on the system that you could need in an emergency. You get a couple sponges, water hose, and nozzle, and then you get a spare filter. I always tell people this filter needs to be changed at the first 100 hours of pumping. So in that side cabinet there where the hour meter is, after 100 hours we want to change this suction filter, and we have videos on how to do that. Another thing is this is a grease filler that comes in here. So this is for your grease pot on the back of the pump for greasing the auto greaser. So you spin this off, you put a whole tube of grease in here, and you can fill up your auto greaser with that. So that is a very handy thing to have. Just make sure you keep this area clean, no dirt on there, no gravel. You don't want to get that in your grease, which then could get in your grease machine, which isn't good. One thing I want to touch on is this wrench here. This comes with every one of our concrete pumps, and a lot of people don't know what it is. This is a wrench for your suction screen inside your hydraulic tank. So when you go to change your hydraulic oil and clean your tank, you want to remove your strainers. So there's this large strainer is for the main oil suction. This small strainer on some units is used for the boom filter, or the boom suction for the boom pump. So this is a piece that comes in the toolbox, which people are unfamiliar with what it's for, and kind of just set it off to the side or ignore it. But yeah, it's something that you should keep, maybe not in here, but put on your shelf with that sensing valve in the case that you go to do a 1,000-hour service on it when you're changing your oil. Last thing we have in here is a working lamp. So this is a magnetic working lamp, so that if you're in need of some extra light on the site, gets laid out or early in the morning, there's a plug-in on the rear electrical panel for this lamp. You have a switch to turn it on and off, but it's magnetic, so if you need to stick it to something, and you can adjust it for your convenience. At the back corner here, we have our rear switch panel. So the unit has what's called a local mode and a remote mode. One feature is this switch here. This is your local, switch down for local, switch up for remote. So if you ever cannot operate your remote, just double check that this switch is in the upward position. It's in the top left-hand corner. It lights up when we are in PTO. So once you're in local mode, you can operate things like pumping, reverse pump, engine RPM. All the other switches in here, there's vibrator that is on, can be operated either in remote or local, as well as the greaser, the cooling fan, and the horn. Also the E-stop can be depressed in either mode. So that's inside this panel. Just make sure this stays nice and clean. If any switch boots get damaged or E-stop gets damaged, make sure you change that right away. One thing behind here is our horn. This has a rear mounted horn, so we want to just note the location of that, and as well as your working light here. And then we can come come around after here, we'll come to the back of the unit and we'll go over the air chuck, the water hookup, and that kind of thing. All right, so at the back corner here, down low, we have an air chuck. So you can hook up an air line for blowing out system, for chipping a hopper, or filling a tire, whatever you need. There's a quarter turn valve here for your water. As you can see, there's water in this line. If you leave your tank full and have this line off and have this valve open, it will auto siphon your water tank all out of water. So if you have your hose hooked up, you can leave this valve open. Also, we recommend having that open if you're parking outside during freezing temperatures, because that line up to the water tank will freeze. So that's that point. There's a grease zerk here. This needs to be greased after the end of every pump job, or at least at the end of every day. This is to purge all the concrete from the rear housing, as well as all the other components on the inside the hopper, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. There's also 2 gauges here. So this is your concrete pump pressure gauge here, and this is your accumulator pressure circuit for your S valve switching. So this pressure needs to be at 200 and to operate, and this pressure will vary depending on the restriction or load on your system. So that's what that does. Above it, we have your auger water valve. So this left handle is your auger. The right handle, that turns on your water pump. So you cannot have both operating at the same time, but you can operate one or the other. Another thing to note is back here, we have a horn button back here. So if you need to alert the driver, or the ready mix needs to alert the driver that there's an issue back here, there's a horn to honk. And then also underneath this cover there's a limit switch. So if the grate gets lifted during pumping or during operation, it will kick out the e-stop. It's the same thing as an e-stop. It'll stop the RPM, the pump, the S-valve shifting, the augers. Will stop everything when this is functioning and lifted. All right, so we have our trap door, or hopper bottom door, some people call it. So this drains out the concrete after a job when you're at your washout. So we have that there. This is your 5-inch heavy-duty discharge outlet. So 5-inch clamp goes on here. Your vibrator bolted to the back of the hopper, and this is a spot you can hang your hose. We can climb up here and we can lift up the hopper lid. So if you look here, there's a push button. This opens this hopper lid. So this is an optional feature. There's either a splash guard or a hopper lid. And then inside here we have our grate and then our paddles. We'll go through that in a minute here. So inside the hopper, grate's up, unit is off, so we're safe. But here's your paddles, S-tube or S-valve, wear plate, cutting ring, and then your rear housing, front housing, auger hubs. Those are kind of the terms we use for all these items and components. So if you're needing replacement parts or what have you, you can refer to them as that and we will understand. Yeah, they call this an easy clean hopper. It's all sloped to the bottom, so it's going to clean out very easy. So yeah, we'll close the lid on this and we can move on to the next step. So we've got our fold down side panel here. The deck is nice and long. We got room for 10-foot pipes. It's a little bit longer than 10 feet. But yeah, you can put 10-foot pipes on each side. And then you can wrap some hoses around here. 25 foot usually is what customers do. They can get all the way around. Lots of room, not too tight. Now let's go up on the deck and let's take a look at some features up on the deck here. So this big thing right here, this is your water tank. So this is a 211 gallon or 800 liter water tank. The fill port is here, the rear, one on each side. Your water line, so your water pressure line comes out here and goes down to the back right here. Then we'll go over some stuff right here. So this here is your hydraulic tank. This square block here, right on the top is your fill cap. So this fill cap is the tank is pressurized. So before you fill it up, you want to make sure that this pressure is at 0. I'll show shortly where the pressure drain is there. But tank pressure gauge, this is your return filter. So every 500 pumping hours, we want to change this filter. You can access this filter from the top. There's a filter indicator gauge. It's a good thing to have a review on, because potentially before 500 hours you might have to change that if this gauge does go into the red. So there's an indicator there, it goes green to red. So that's that location. There's 2 regulators here. As you can see, there's one regulator here is your hydraulic tank pressure regulator, this one here, and then this one here is the regulator for the PTO. So this gets air pressure all the time. This only gets air pressure when you engage the PTO. As you can see here, we have your automatic greaser that we talked about earlier, and that quick fill is mounted right to the back side of that. Up here, this is what we call a terminal box. So this takes all the electrical components that are in that panel, sends it through a 24 wire cable into this location, and then it breaks it out. So it goes, electrical power goes to the cab, it goes to the greaser, it goes to the reversing valve, it goes to the forwarding valves, it goes to all sorts of components on this unit. So that's a great spot to do troubleshooting. Just make sure that this cover stays on, no moisture gets in there. The thing that I'm leaning on here is what we call your tank pressure relief valve. So if potentially the system gets warm, expansion and contraction, these valves will open to drain off excess pressure. So there's 2 pressure relief valves right here, and there's a third one down here. This one's set at 1 bar down here, and then it's set at 1.3 bar, 1.7 bar. So those they're all adjustable and can be serviced if there's an issue. So way in front of this terminal box, one thing I didn't see from the other side, but your sight glass is here. This shows a different view of the sight gauge. When you are starting it up, you want to see oil on the gauge and on the top half of the gauge for normal operation. The full line is going to be the black line here on the top of the gauge. You don't want to go any higher than that just because of expansion, but we don't want to go any lower than about right here as well because of the potential cavitation. Then down here, when we talked about the suction filter that comes in the toolbox, this is the filter gauge. This is the filter housing. So when you change that filter, you want to make sure there's no pressure on the tank, but you don't have to drain the oil. There's actually a valve in here. As you thread that filter out, there's a valve in there that actually closes so no oil will leak. So when you go and change the filter, which we have a video on, remove it and then reinstall it. And that's at 100 pump hours. You want to change that. And then after that, you want to do it every 250 after that. So that's that indicator and filter housing right there. Now we're going to come over here. That's the suction for your accumulator circuit. Here's your accumulator bottle right here. So that's a 4-liter accumulator mounted up here. The charge on that is 95 bar. So that's right there. Next items we can go through is the main pumping manifold, which is here. So this to turn the pump on, you have the 2 green zip ties here and these solenoids. When you hit pump on, those will light up. That's for pumping concrete. When you want to do reverse pump, there's a solenoid here with the orange zip tie. That's for reverse, but you need a secondary one, and there's another zip tie down here, and that's solenoid. So those 2 are for reverse pump, but that's in conjunction with these 2 green valves here. So this is your main pumping manifold. This is for your pumping cylinders, and then this lower manifold right here is for your S tube or your S valve. So this has a red handle here. This is your soft shift when closed, hard shift when open. This green handle here is your manual dump valve to dump any stored pressure in the system for your accumulator. So that works right there. There is also a electronic dump valve, which is to the right of to the driver's side of the greaser here, which has a pink zip tie. So that closes when you clear your e-stop to build your accumulator pressure, which you'll see the gauge on the back. So you'll have your hydraulic pressure. So grease pot, what else did we need to cover in this location here? So this solenoid right here is for your oil cooler. So this solenoid is powered to turn the fan off. If you lose power, a fuse blows, lose PTO power for some reason, this fan will kick on. The fan also has a sensor on the hydraulic tank, there's a sensor with a little angle plug here, square plug. This is what's called a 55-degree sensor. So that sensor will turn the fan on no matter what at 55 degrees Celsius. Below that sensor there is a 90-degree shutdown sensor that will shut down your pump and your accumulator pressure, so you cannot pump if the hydraulic oil overheats past 90 degrees Celsius. To do the hydraulic oil service we talked about earlier, at about 1,000 pumping hours or by oil sampling, we would recommend changing the hydraulic oil in this tank. And you can see there's an access port in the top, and that's to access that suction strainer. So there's this big white pipe here that feeds the main oil pump. Inside the tank, on the end of that, there's going to be a strainer, and that's where you use that big spanner to open up that, or to remove that strainer, and you can wash that. We recommend washing it with like a brake cleaner or a clean solvent, and then dry it well, and then reinstall. One part of our pump kit that makes everything simple is this sticker. So this is on every unit. We have this indicator. All the pumps operate the same to override them. On this line pump, there's a little bit of stuff in a different location just due to the location of how they have the water tank versus the pump kit. But it's all clearly labeled with the zip ties. So we can go through here. We have step 1, we got to get accumulator pressure. So that's step 1, pink zip tie. Step 2 is to turn on the pump. So that's over here. We got those 2 green buttons we lock in. And if we want our volume control to work, then there's a 3rd green valve or green button to lock in up here. And then if we need to operate reverse pumping, which is step 3, those are those 2 orange zip ties for reverse. There's also some information on how to increase or decrease your pump speed. So if you need to speed up to finish a job, or you want to pump it slow when you're washing out, there's different ways to do that, and you can follow the steps. If you need to replace the sticker, if it gets pressure washed off or something, please let us know. We'll get you one, no problem. We have safety, warning, and informational labels throughout the pump. Please review each label. If you have any questions, please let us know. So on top of the water tank here, we have a big lid. This is an access lid. If you need to get in here to do any maintenance, something fell in the tank, or you have an issue. I want to talk about the water pump. This is your hydraulic motor that drives the pump. The pump's mounted inside the tank. This is your outlet line. This discharges to the back where that core return valve is, where we went over before. This is your pressure relief valve. So this we set at the factory for 150 psi. If you want to decrease that pressure, you're going to turn it out, loosen the jam nut, turn this T-handle out. If you want to increase the pressure, we would recommend staying with 150 psi, but if you want more pressure, you can turn it up. But you have to be aware this could cause a failure of your water hose, your water nozzle. One thing I want to talk about is the water tank. This is like a water pump, or it is a water pump, and you don't want to run that dry. You run that dry, the water is what actually cools this pump, and if you run it dry, that pump gets hot and it will burn out. So you'll have a premature failure of your water pump if you run it dry. So if you're trying to empty your water at the end of the day, just drain it with your valve. Don't use the pump to drain it. One other thing is, if you have a lot of hard water in your area, you could get buildup in your tank on your heater or on the pump of calcium buildup, and you might have to get in there and clean it off. So this stainless steel piece down here is your water tank heater. This is on the back side of the water tank. There's a quarter turn valve here, turns on your heat. Like we talked about earlier, on the front of the engine, we want to make sure that both valves are open, and then at any point you can shut off your hot water here. Instead of getting on the engine and turning it off there, but this turns off your hot water heat to the tank. Then there's a line that comes through here. This line feeds the water box. So when you want to fill your water box, it's a good part to talk about here. This water box here, there's a lid, comes off. There's your drain right here. This drains your water box, this little thing. It falls in place. To drain it, you turn it like so. That's to lock it in. So now we're filling. So this valve opens here, and that fills your water box. So another topic we want to go over here is how full to fill this. So we want to fill this. If you look, you can see your rods in here. You want to fill the water to the bottom of the rods. You don't want to fill it above the rods because of thermal expansion can draw water back into the hydraulic system if when you're not pressurized. So that's what we want to do. I recommend always draining this tank at the end of each day and then refilling it in the morning again. It makes it a good habit. Then you can always check on if there's any contamination in the box. Is there an oil leak? Is there too much slurry in here, like your mud cups are going? Sort of the things to check. There's also two little grease zerks right here. These two grease zerks are for greasing your mud cups. They're tied into this oiling block. So every stroke that the pump takes when you're pumping forward drips a little bit of oil onto the mud cup. So that it applies oil while you're pumping. But if you want to grease your cups, you bring the cup to the top, give it 6 to 8 shots of grease every so often. You can grease the cup. Make sure your lid is in place when you're driving. You can always drain the tank without taking this lid off. So as you can see, this handle here flips up, and I'm able to drain that when you're done. This has a nice aluminum cover here, which is removable. It's not too heavy, but it's a nice weight that's not going to go anywhere. So as you can see here, we talked about safety decals before. If these decals get damaged or blow off due to pressure washing or what have you, we can get you some replacement decals. So some might ask, why do we pressurize our hydraulic tank? So this hydraulic tank is pressurized, so the volume of oil required on this mobile piece of hydraulic equipment doesn't have to be a large volume. You pressurize the oil, it lessens the likeliness of cavitation on startup. It allows any air which gets in the oil, actually when you're pushing down on the oil, you're actually going to bring those air bubbles. If you do get air bubbles in the system, you're going to bring them up to the surface and cause them to dissipate, so you don't have any cavitation due to that. So that's a bit about pressurized tanks. You want this gauge to read between 0.5 and 1 bar. If you're any lower than 0.5 of a bar, you want to check your air regulator, make sure it's working correctly, and adjust it to suit. So at the end of each day of pumping, we recommend draining off the pressurized hydraulic tank. This will allow the system to be de-energized with the pressure in case there's an oil leak. And then what we recommend is when you go to start your day, to close this valve before you put it into PTO, and then the tank can re-energize, and then you will have no cavitation on startup. Down below here on this unit, this Freightliner has the DEF tank right here in this location. And then if we look right here is obviously our working light, and then underneath here we have our electrical and our oil tank drain. So I've taken off the cover of this breaker box here, but we have a 60 amp main power breaker here. So the battery power comes into this box here, comes into this stud, and this then feeds the main panel as well as it feeds these two breakers here. The top breaker is the vibrator, is a thermal breaker, and then the terminal down here is what we call our accessory breaker or auxiliary breaker. This feeds outrigger lights, extra horn, other functions on the unit that you might add. We add a 30 amp thermal breaker in there. And as you can see right beside us is the quarter turn valve for draining your hydraulic oil. I recommend once every 1 to 2 months removing the plug and draining out about a cup of oil. Any condensed water on the bottom of the tank will come down to the lowest point, and you can collect that there. That's a good way to tell if you're getting water into your system, and you can then address the rod seals or some issue on the top of the hydraulic tank. So we'll put this cover back on now. So you'll see this panel here. In behind this panel there's actually your battery box for your truck. So there's 2 batteries in there for the truck that also sends power directly from there to that breaker box we were talking about earlier. So this remote, the AirCom, it actually tells you how to get in, how to turn on the remote. So E-stop pushed, green button pushed, release the E-stop, release the green button, and it's going to start up. It says Alliance. As you can see, we have a couple, these buttons are not labeled, but the screens tell you what they do. So top button, it's not labeled, but that's your horn. So you gotta honk your horn to tell you when we're ready to work, so that clears the e-stop. So the green light, or the red light on here turns off, green light's on here, we're good to operate. So this light here, it shows the on function there, that's for pump on. So when you hit this pump here, it actually makes this go solid. As you can hear, the pump is on, the vibrator is going. So this shows forward pump, and then if you want to go into reverse pump, you push that button for reverse pump. So forward pump's over here, reverse pump is over here, and then this is our horn button down here again. So this is your engine RPM, this button. So if we push it here, engine RPM goes up. Hold it, engine RPM goes down. This engine on the Freightliner, because we're going into third gear, will rev to 2100 RPM. So if you're concerned your engine is going too high, you can always check the decal under the visor, or you can call and ask us. But yeah, 2300 RPM, this will rev to. And this middle button here is your stroke control or output control. So as you can see, it's almost like a speedometer or a tachometer where it goes up and down. You can push and hold it, or you can just click it and the pump volume will go up. So that will go up like so and down like so. And then to stop the engine, this is engine stop, which we're not going to do, and this is engine start. Because this is an automatic, the engine start does not work, and this button is the e-stop. So you can hear e-stop is engaged, remote turns off. So we're going to turn it back on again, and we're good to go. One neat feature about this Aircom is this connector here. So this is a USB connection here. You get a cable with your remote, and if this remote, your battery dies and you need to charge it, you can actually plug this into like a battery bank. And then, but once you plug it in, if you have the remote on, the remote will auto turn off once you plug this in, and then you will have to reinitiate the on feature. So what we recommend doing is make sure you put it on your charger every night and charge it up. But if you're having battery issues, you'll have to let us know, and we'll get this in for service and get you back going there. As you can see, also this battery or this remote is magnetic. So this is a waterproof remote. There is also a protective cover if you want to put it on there. It comes with a cover. It's clear on the face, and it will still work with the charger. And it comes with this lanyard, the short one. It also comes with a long one. And it comes with a belt clip. I don't recommend leaving it there when you drive down the road because it might slide off. It has a magnet, but it's not super strong. But yeah, this is all about the remote. As you can see, when we do hit pump on, clear our e-stop. This lights up. Actually, I'm going to turn off the vibrator. It's not so loud. As you can see here, this goes solid, and our pump light on here also turns on the panel. Pump off. And e-stop. All right, so if you have any issues with your remote, like we were talking battery die, reception issue, something with a problem with your remote, you need to go to Hardwire. I've got the Hardwire remote box here. So it's a very simple remote, e-stop in the middle. Horn is here. There's no power up button. Once your e-stop is released, you got to honk your horn, then your e-stops are clear. Pump on is here. Reverse pump is down. Forward pump is up. Output control is here. And your engine RPM is here. So to hook this up to the panel, you need the cable. So we got the cable here. We push, unlatch the right-hand side connector. It says X connector on the top of it. There's also a sticker on the top here, which you can't see from here. But so we need to remove that cable, set it off the side, and we get the same looking cable. So we come with two, it comes with two cables. We grab the one with the male pins, and we're gonna set it up in here like so, and then we can latch it in place. And then this cable is tied up right now, but that's okay. Then we can also hook this up. This cable only goes one way. So, and there's 3 notches here on this side and 2 on this side. So 3 and 2 goes like so, and then we can latch like so, and then we're good to operate hardwire. So, and then when you want to reverse, to go back to running with the remote, you reverse the process, and then you can go back to running your wireless remote. If you require more training, please call our service department to schedule an in-person in-service.